Bonjour, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of The Drunken Pirate. And today we're going to do something a little different. We're not going to focus so much on pirates as we are some of the great, in my opinion, chefs of Louisiana. So last time we talked about a pirate by the name of Gumbo, who joined forces with Jean Lafitte for the Battle of New Orleans. And I thought while we're in New Orleans, we might as well explore this a little bit. So today we're going to pay tribute to one of the greater chefs from Louisiana, Chef Paul Prudhomme, and one of my favorites that I remember as a child watching with my grandfather, and that's Justin Wilson. So today we're going to be making gumbo. So, as they say, laissez-les bon temps rouler. Let the good times roll. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start off making our roux. Now a roux is a base for a sauce. And the roux for gumbo is going to make or break your gumbo. And we start by melting 3/4 of a cup of butter in a skillet. And to that we're going to add a cup of flour. Now this is a very delicate process because what you want to do is you want to very gently cook this flour. Now you see that as we started out here, we're kind of at a very blah tan color. By the time we're ready to use this roux, it should be a chocolate color. Now some important things to remember as we're making this is you don't want your heat up too high. You want it to be manageable for you. Do not leave your roux. This is one of those things that if you turn your back on it, you can scorch it very easily. You scorch it, you've ruined the entire taste of your gumbo. So you want to make sure that you are constantly stirring and keeping an eye on things. If your roux looks like it's starting to brown a little too quick, take it off of the heat, stir for a minute, maybe drop your heat a little bit. Okay? Something that you will notice about this is as you go along, it may start to thin out a little bit more, and that's okay. It's all going to work out for us in the end. Now this is a very long process, so what we're going to do is as we get closer to time for the roux to be usable, we'll come back in and look at how long it took us. So we'll see you in just a few. So we're back, and as you can see, we've had some pretty substantial changes to color. When your roux is getting to the point where you want to go ahead and take it off the heat, it'll start to smell like popcorn. Almost not quite a burnt smell. You don't definitely want it to be burnt. Now when you take it off the heat, if you're using a pan that has a heavy bottom, these are stainless steel pans, but they have a copper bottom to them, they're going to retain heat. So don't just set it off to the side and forget about it. You need to continue to stir so it doesn't scorch from that residual heat. Now while we're taking care of baby and miss, we have heated some oil in our pot here. It's about a tablespoon of oil. And we are going to go ahead and saute some onions. After that, we are going to add some sliced okra. Now when you cook okra, you're going to find it gets very slimy. Let it cook for a little bit and that slime will start to dissipate. Once it gets to that point where the okra starts to soften up and the sliminess has gone out of it, then you'll know that it's cooked through. Once we get to that point, we're going to add some green bell pepper, some celery, let those soften up. We're going to add some minced garlic, and then we'll be able to add our roux into the mix. We'll add our chicken broth and make our soup. So we're probably hot enough now. We can go ahead and add the onion. Now, one of the great things about Justin Wilson is that not only was he a good cook, but he was also a great storyteller. And his stories were very folksy, you know, built around Cajun culture, things of that nature. So I thought in order to pay tribute, I would tell one of Justin's stories while we're letting this work up here. So in advance, let me apologize if this offends anybody. So there was this old Cajun boy who was down at the bar one night, and he had had a little bit to imbibe and was a little bit inebriated, and decided it was time to go home, and so he walked through the cemetery. Now, this was a bad deal because this boy was inebriated, and it had been raining, and it's dark, and he in the cemetery. So he walking, and sure enough, he done fall into an open grave that had been open for the day ahead. Now he's sitting there, and he's in this water in this grave, and he's trying to figure out what am I going to do? Because he can't stand up, and he sure can't climb out. So he kind of resigned himself to the situation and lays back in the grave. And he starts to call out, help me, I'm cold, I'm cold. Now it just so happened that another old boy who had been down at another bar had drunk his fill, and he was going home too. Now he wasn't as drunk, but he was pretty good. And as he's walking through the same cemetery, he starts to hear, help me, I'm cold. And he think, well, somebody need help. So he starts to look for where the sound coming from, and after a while he come upon the open grave. And he see the pile of dirt, and he look in, and he see the man laying in the grave. And the man said, help me, I'm cold. And he says, well, of course you are. You done kicked off all your dirt. So, hopefully that gave you a little chuckle. We are going to let our veggies go ahead and saute. And when it gets time for us to add the roux, we'll come back and I'll show you what that is going to look like. So we're going to add the broth, stirring as we go, a little bit at a time to make sure that we're smoothing everything out. Now, we may have had some camera difficulty right there. So, the part that we missed was once you get to a point where your vegetables are ready for you to add your roux, then you want to make sure that your roux is stirred up and ready to go, because it will thicken as it sits. You also want to make sure that you have a pot of hot water so that you're not having to wait for the tap, if that's where you're getting your hot water, and you can go ahead and add as you go. Now you want to make sure that after you put the roux in, that you're stirring to keep everything smooth while you're adding the liquid. So this looks really good. Hopefully, if you're making it, yours looks really good as well. Now, there's some meat components that we're going to add to our gumbo. And gumbo, from what I have read, is one of those things that's very different for everybody. Some people like shrimp gumbo, some people like gumbo with the andouille sausage in it. We happen to like the gumbo that has the andouille, the shrimp, and the chicken in it. So that's what we're going to be making today. Now, I've got a cup and a half of sliced cooked andouille sausage, and I've put a tablespoon of Cajun seasoning on that and mixed it up. The Cajun seasoning that I like to use is Emeril's, and then I add some of my own things to it as we go. So it's pretty spicy. So we've added that in. Now we're going to take our chicken. We've got about a cup and a half of chicken. Now I had some extra chicken. I don't want to waste it. So this happens to be more than a cup and a half, but a cup and a half will do for you. And again, we've just sprinkled the Cajun seasoning over it. And this has already been cooked. We shredded it earlier. So we're going to make a mess. And add this to our mixture. Now at this point, everything that's in here is already cooked. So theoretically you could say, okay, well, we're done. We're going to shut it off. Let's eat. But I like to let it go ahead and sit for a few minutes so that the flavors can kind of start to merge and it can really develop that taste that we're looking for. Now in the meantime, we've got our shrimp that we are thawing. It's best if you use raw shrimp. What we're going to do is when the shrimp is ready, we're going to toss the shrimp in here. We're going to let it cook just long enough for the shrimp to cook through. In the meantime, we're making us some rice, and then we'll be ready to eat. So we'll see you in just a few. So we went ahead and we added our shrimp in. Just like we did with the chicken and the andouille, we sprinkled some of the Cajun seasoning, coated it, put it on in. We've let it cook for about 7 to 10 minutes. You'll know when shrimp is done because it goes from a gray color to a very pretty pink. So our rice is done, our bowls are ready. So what we're going to do now is get us a big old scoop. And that's just beautiful. It's enough to make a fat kid sing. Take a look at that. So it's chunky, it's hot, kind of like myself. Perfect for when the weather's cold, perfect when the weather's hot. It's just a good meal. So give this a try. If you make it and you like it and everything turns out great, let me know. I'm always glad to hear from everybody. So until next time, au revoir.